Welcome back everybody, I'm John Khabib, your host, and today I'm going to react to a video called Mortal Kombat. You'll never see this classic cartoon the same way again. Now for new updates and content, you can visit the links in the description down below, and let's get started. Enjoy.
A Saturday morning cartoon killed someone in its first episode, and the network approved every frame of it. Mortal Kombat: Defenders of the Realm wasn't censored the way you think it was. The darkness wasn't removed. It was engineered to pass, built into the frame, threaded into implication, calibrated to land exactly 1 millimeter below what the censors were permitted to flag. By the end of this, you'll know precisely what they embedded in those episodes, and exactly why it was allowed to stay. A hero nearly loses her humanity, not to a weapon, but to a biological rewrite happening on screen while the censors watched and said nothing. A vengeance story built on massacre gets smuggled past network standards without a single frame of blood. And then there's the first episode moment. Sub-Zero, a frozen man, and a consequence so clean and so final that the network signed off on it because the explicit version never appeared. Just the implication, just you completing the picture yourself. That moment is coming, and it reframes everything. If hidden TV history, the scenes they engineered past the censors, the darkness they built into children's programming and called it approved, is your thing, here's what Mortal Kombat: Defenders of the Realm really was.
9 out of 10 targets hit.
Hey, guess you SWAT guys can shoot straight.
And you shall be ruler of Outworld.
Asgarth, you are my father's most
By 1996, Mortal Kombat was the most controversial video game franchise on the planet. Congressional hearings, parental outcry. It was the direct cause of the ESRB rating system being created in the first place. So when Threshold Entertainment and Film Roman announced an animated television series based on the property, everyone knew what was coming. They were going to sand every edge down to nothing, wrap it in a Saturday morning bow, and sell action figures. And on the surface, that's exactly what happened. You had Liu Kang, Sonya Blade, Kitana, Jax, Sub-Zero, Stryker, Nightwolf, and Kung Lao. The roster of Earthrealm's defenders, assembled like the X-Men if the X-Men operated between dimensions. The animation was clean, the dialogue was age-appropriate, the villains lost, week after week, in ways that kept the network standards departments comfortable. Parents saw a superhero cartoon with a fighting game license. That's what the promotional material said. What was actually running through the show's bones was something considerably more unsettling. The creative team understood exactly what the source material was. This wasn't a franchise about tournament fighting. It was a mythology built on genocide, betrayal, demonic possession, and the systematic destruction of entire civilizations. Scorpion wasn't a ninja with a cool moveset. He was a man who had watched his family and clan wiped out, died himself, and came back from hell, fueled entirely by the need for revenge. Sonya Blade's history wasn't adventure. It was obsession, born from loss. Sub-Zero's identity was bound up in a brotherhood that operated as much like a death cult as a martial arts order. The show didn't ignore any of that. It couldn't. The lore was the only reason the audience cared. Here's what's worth understanding before we get to the specific moments. The censorship in this show wasn't a limitation imposed from outside. It was a technique. The writers weren't working around the restrictions, they were using them. Darkness by implication. Stakes communicated through what the camera refused to show. The standard department was watching for explicit content. The writers were operating in the space of what was understood. That distinction matters, because it means every moment that follows wasn't a compromise. It was a choice. 4 moments define what this show actually was. The last one happens in the first 10 minutes of episode 1, before the team is fully assembled, before you had any reason to expect what was coming. The mechanism wasn't editing. There was no darker version sitting in a vault somewhere. The darkness was engineered into the broadcast version from the start. Someone in that writer's room made a deliberate decision. We can't show the brutality of the source material, but we can make sure the audience feels the weight of it. The result was a show operating on two frequencies simultaneously, the surface cartoon and the subtext running underneath it, unmistakably adult, darker than most shows in its era ever attempted to be. The network called it approved. The writers called it a delivery system. The warning signs started early, several of them.
You're staying at base in case something is wrong. We can't risk everyone getting trapped in...
The moments.
We cannot defeat Khan alone either, but allied with Prince...
Censored in plain sight. The broadcast showed you something clean and contained. A villain or outworld creature is engaged, defeated, and then gone. An explosion of light. A fall into a chasm. A portal closes. The camera is already moving on before the destination of whatever just fell becomes relevant. Network approved. Safe. Exactly what the standards department expected. What those moments actually represented, stacked together across the full run of the series, was a body count. Not metaphorical. The implication in virtually every one of those defeats, pits with no visible bottom, energy effects that visibly consumed rather than merely staggered, portals that didn't reopen, was finality. These weren't knockouts, they weren't captures or retreats. The show framed them as endings. It just declined to linger on what an ending looked like. Why does this matter? Because the cumulative effect changes the entire texture of the show. In most Saturday morning cartoons from this era, defeat meant capture, retreat, or a fade-out that preserved everyone's options for next week. You absorbed that convention over hundreds of episodes of viewing. You calibrated your expectations accordingly. Defenders of the Realm let you carry that expectation in, and then consistently delivered something heavier, while never technically violating the standard. Did you ever stop and ask yourself what happened to the creature that fell into that pit? Most kids didn't. The show was counting on that. Most adults rewatching it now find themselves stopping at every one of those moments, doing the math, and landing somewhere uncomfortable. The thing that went down didn't come back up. The camera just chose not to show you the why or the how. That's not censorship protecting the audience. That's censorship being weaponized to make the moment more effective.
Jack, you've gotta use your head! The guy's in the Gator family! You can outthink...
Identity erasure. The broadcast version. Reptile administers a serum to Sonya Blade. The process begins. She is visibly changing. The threat is explicit. She will stop being herself. The team intervenes. She is saved. Standard structure. Stakes presented and then diffused. What the episode was actually depicting, if you sit with the conceptual weight of it, is a form of body horror genuinely unusual for children's programming in 1996. The fear embedded in that scenario isn't physical danger, it's identity erasure. The thing being threatened isn't Sonya's life, it's her selfhood, her human continuity, her right to remain who she is. Reptile serum isn't trying to kill her, it's trying to replace her with something that wears her face. That concept lands very differently depending on your age and what you bring. For a child, it's a monster episode. Scary, resolved, forgotten by the time you're eating your cereal. For an adult, it maps onto something more recognizable and considerably more disturbing. The loss of self. The fear of becoming unrecognizable to the people who know you. The question the show briefly opens and then refuses to fully answer is whether what was saved at the end is entirely the same thing that was there before the process started. The network approved this episode without a note, because nothing explicit was shown, just the implication, just the understanding.
Powers of evil, I will not rest until I have my revenge!
The Dead Man's Mission.
Get over here!
The broadcast version gave you a tortured warrior pursuing justice for wrongs done against him. Betrayal, loss, the drive for vengeance. Dark for the genre, legible as a narrative. A hero defined by tragedy. Familiar enough that younger viewers could absorb it without it registering as extraordinary. What the episode was actually translating, compressed and reframed as it was something considerably more extreme. Scorpion's origin in the Mortal Kombat lore involves the complete annihilation of his clan and his family, his own death, and his return as a genuinely damned entity operating from a hellish underworld. He is not a tragic hero pursuing closure. He is a dead man. The vengeance isn't a mission, it's the only thing still animating him. He's not coming back to justice or redemption, he's coming back as a consequence. The cartoon pulled back from the explicit detail of the massacre. It softened the spectral, infernal nature of what Scorpion actually was. But the themes, betrayal so complete it ends lives, loss so total it transcends death itself, a vendetta that defines an entire existence, were all present in that episode. Just presented at a volume a child could experience without fully parsing. Rewatch it with what you now know about the source material. The cartoon's version of Scorpion is a compression. The thing underneath it, the thing the writers were drawing from, is far darker than anything they put on screen. And that darkness bleeds through in every frame he's in how he's lit, how he moves, how his motivation is explained without ever fully stating what a dead man returns from hell to do. The network saw a tortured anti-hero. The writers knew what he actually was.
Realm to realm, I will unearth my army of evil dead.
The death in the space between frames. The broadcast version was technically clean. A Lin Kuei ninja confronts Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero responds by flash freezing him solid. The ninja is completely encased in ice. And then the scene moves on. The shattering, the consequence, the end point of what happens to a human body turned to ice and then subjected to force happens off-screen. The camera doesn't go there, you don't see it. But you know. You've always known. That's the entire architecture of the moment. The show gave you enough, the freeze, the implication, the unmistakable framing, and then trusted you to complete the sequence in your own imagination. For children watching in 1996, that completion was instant and unambiguous. A man died in the first episode. Not off-screen in the vague sense of, we don't know what happened. Off-screen in the specific sense of, we know exactly what happened, and the camera chose not to show it to you. This is the moment that reframes everything else in the series. Because it's the first episode, this isn't a season finale escalation or a moment buried mid-run. They put it right there in the opening chapter. Before the team was fully assembled, before the stakes of the season were established, before any viewer could calibrate their expectations, someone was frozen solid and shattered into pieces. And the show moved forward as if that were simply the established reality of the world you were entering. What did you think had happened? Did you process it consciously? Or did your child's mind absorb it and file it somewhere quiet? Most people who watch this show remember the scene. Very few, watching it again now, remember feeling the weight of what it was actually depicting. The show slipped it past you, not despite the implied cut, but because of it. What the imagination completes, the imagination also tends to accept without question. The Lin Kuei ninja had a name somewhere in a writer's room document. He was a character, not a prop. He had a history and a purpose. And in the first 10 minutes of episode 1, he met a definitive and irreversible end, while the camera was politely looking the other way. That was the show's opening statement. Everything that followed was written in the same language. The network signed off on all of it.
Continues.
What it means now. Knowing all of this doesn't diminish what Defenders of the Realm was. If anything, it explains why the show left the impression it did. Why, for a single-season cartoon that ran only 12 episodes and was considered a commercial footnote, it stuck with people. Something in it registered as different. Something in it felt like it carried actual weight, even if you couldn't articulate what that weight was at the time. That weight was intentional. The production team couldn't give you the full brutal mythology of Mortal Kombat. The network wouldn't carry it, the advertiser relationships wouldn't support it, the regulatory environment of mid-90s children's television made it impossible. So they built a secondary channel. They embedded the consequences in implication, in framing, in the cutaway and the aftermath not shown. They trusted the audience, including its youngest members, to complete the picture. Most Saturday morning cartoons of this era were explicitly designed to underestimate their viewers. Reset buttons were hit every episode. Stakes evaporated. Villains who should have been destroyed quietly reappeared the following week, convenient and consequence-free. Defenders of the Realm declined to do that. When someone went into a pit, they stayed in the pit. When a transformation nearly completed, the episode didn't fully reassure you that everything had returned to baseline. When a man was frozen solid in the first episode, the show didn't explain it away or soften it. It just moved on. What does the censorship tell us about that era? It tells us that the barrier wasn't between dark content and children. It was between explicit darkness and implied darkness. The networks monitored for what was shown. What was understood operated in a different jurisdiction entirely. And here's what the sanitized version didn't lose: almost nothing. Because the sanitizing was the technique, the implication was more effective than explicit depiction would have been. A body shown is a moment. A body you know is there but cannot see. That lingers. That's what you're still carrying from that first episode, 30 years later, whether you consciously remembered the show or not. The show didn't protect you from the darkness. It made you the one who had to imagine it. Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm ran 12 episodes and then disappeared. But it left something behind in everyone who sat in front of it on a Saturday morning. Not the fights, not the roster. The feeling that the world in those frames had actual stakes. That when the camera looked away, the thing it was avoiding was real. They built the darkness into the approved version. They made you complete it yourself. And 30 years later, you're still carrying that first episode cutaway, the freeze, the implication, the camera that looked away, without ever having fully forgotten it. Which of these moments landed hardest when you first saw it? The transformation, the dead man's mission, or that first episode cutaway you processed at 7 years old and never fully forgot?
So that was Mortal Kombat. You'll never look at the classic cartoon the same way again. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to be brutally honest here. I've never watched the cartoon, but as we saw in this video, we got the regular characters like Sub-Zero, Stryker, Kitana, Liu Kang, Raiden, Shao Kahn, Shang Tsung, Shiva, Rain, and so forth. I must say, I didn't even know they censored this cartoon, seeing that this game or the franchise is really R-rated. And since the first game, people were complaining about the blood and the gore. But, you know, it is what it is. Just to show you that I am such a big Mortal Kombat fan, I've got a couple of merchandise that I would like to share with you. Mortal Kombat 3 is my absolute favorite game of all time. And I've still got the copy of Mortal Kombat 3. I've got the official pocket codes. And I've got the official arcade secrets. I've also, over the years, collected the soundtracks. Here's the official movie soundtrack from 1995. Here's the official motion picture score of the 1995 movie. And here is Mortal Kombat Annihilation, the soundtrack, even though I absolutely loathe the movie. And here's the movie, still sealed in its DVD case. And the only game other than Mortal Kombat 3 that I own is Mortal Kombat X. So there you have it. I'm going to make an effort to watch Defenders of the Realm because I've never actually watched it in my entire life, but I'm so looking forward to it now. And a word of wisdom for today: test your might. Have a blessed day further, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.